Hello, hello. Welcome to the Fresh Start Podcast. I am Marcia Ramirez.
And I am Stacy Wen. It's good to be here with everyone today.
It's so good. I need a pet update. Are your animals getting along?
Oh, Maggie's cat is just being a huge whippersnapper right now. She is
Still.
not letting the kitten really come out and about. She just keeps him
Shoot. I was
under the
hoping they
bed.
I was hoping they were best friends by now.
I sure was too. They exist in the same room, but it's just dependent on Georgia and her attitude for the
Yeah.
day. But,
Well, cats.
but the little kitten, Ellis, he snuggled for the first time with me last night. He was so
Oh,
cute.
that's so
Normally, he
cute.
just sleeps at the end of the bed and pounces every time my feet move.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's
Well,
which is fun too.
yeah.
What about
Animal
you? How's
animals
your
are
little
fun.
boy?
My little Theo who got attacked 3 weeks ago today. He's
Mm,
had a rough 3 weeks and we had to start him on another antibiotic. Um, but he's getting there. It's just a slow heal. So it's kind of consumed my last 3 weeks is
yeah,
taking care of him, but he's definitely starting to feel better. Now the problem is keeping him from doing too much because he just wants to run around and be a dog, and I can't blame him for
yeah, yeah.
but he has to slow down and take it easy.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of slowing down and taking it
Taking
easy,
it
is that a
easy.
transition into our,
I
our
don't
topic
know.
today?
We've talked in the past about the topic of aging, and I remember we were talking about growing our gray hair out and things
Hmm.
like that in the past, and just what it's like for women to go through the aging process. And we were lucky enough to find a specialist in this area, and I'm really glad we've connected with her. So in today's episode, we sit down with Corinne Auman, who is the founder of Choice Care Navigators, and she is the author of the book Keenagers. So she is really a trailblazer in the field of aging, and she's really passionate about the topic and believes that we should look at aging in a new way. It's an opportunity for growth and it's an opportunity for renewed purpose. So we get to talk to her about that today. She released her book, Keenagers, in 2023, and it covers so many topics. So Marcia and I just enjoyed pulling out different topics from medical care to caregiving to just aspects of aging in general. So this is her mission field. This is where she really does a lot of her work and conversations. And she was just a delightful expert to speak with.
Yes, I loved this conversation. And I think that she really encourages us to, excuse me, encourages us to change our language around aging and, the anti-aging movement that we're constantly bombarded with. It's never pro-aging. We should be
Right.
pro-aging, not anti-aging. We can't fight something that is naturally going to happen to us. And how do we do that gracefully? And how do we do that honorably with our parents as they're aging and people around us? And so, yeah, we cover the gambit.
We
So
did.
it's a really awesome conversation, and I know you guys are going to love it today.
Well, let's get into it.
2-1.
Hi, welcome today. This is Stacy Wynn. You're with the Fresh Start podcast, and I'm joined today by Marcia. Marcia,
Hey,
say,
happy to be here. And I am super excited about our guest today because we just finished her awesome book that we're going to talk to her about today. And man, so much of it spoke to me directly and what I'm going through. And I know it will to a lot of our listeners. So, Corinne Auman, thank you so much for joining us today. We are thrilled to have you here. We're excited to talk about your book. And yeah, thanks for joining us.
Oh,
yeah,
thanks for
perfect.
having me. I love it when people are have read my book and are excited to talk to me.
Absolutely. Well, we'd love to hear from you just a little bit about where you are right now. Just situate yourself in time and place. So our listeners get to know you a little as we get started.
Sure. So I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I run a care management agency, which means we help families kind of navigate this whole aging, caring for aging loved ones process. I am the mother of four teenage children. I am also the daughter of two aging parents. So I am right in the thick of all of this myself. And also, of course, navigating my own journey of getting older and, how do I feel about it? How does everybody else feel about it? Because everybody has opinions about your aging for you. Thank you. So yeah, I think I'm just right in the thick of it, which is what led to the book.
Well, that explains it because my first question was going to be what inspired you to write the book, but I see that there was like you are in the thick of it. You
Mhm.
talk about being the sandwich generation. I know people talk about that, and it sounds like you're right in the middle of it. Is this your first book?
It is. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I noticed right away and wanted to make sure that we gave the listeners a definition of what a keenager is. So your book is Keenagers telling a new story about aging.
Yeah.
And the definition I saw, or at least a quote I saw in the book itself, is it was really about, someone describing why the word keen. And we're keen to learn, travel, advise, engage, and spend. We're even keen to work every now and then. We're keen to do, not just observe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how
And
did you?
how did I come up with
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a word that I pulled out of thin air. That I think I tell the story in the book of a friend of mine. I'm trying to write a book about thinking about growing older in a positive way, right? That's kind of the anti-aging world that we live in. And if you try to go find positive words about aging or growing older, it is really sparse out there. The best you can do is sort of neutral, maybe older adult. Elder is kind of respectful, but there's just not a lot of positive words to describe an older person. There just aren't. And so I was trying to come up with a way to talk about this, and a friend of mine just we were discussing it, and she called her mom and she said, "Mom, what do you and your friends like to be called?" And her mom said, "Teenagers." And she kind of gave that description of we're keen to do, we're keen to explore, like we are still here and active and engaged with the world. And I thought, perfect. I love it. Some people love it, some people don't. That's fine. I just needed a new word because there is such limitation in our current language to talk about aging in a positive way or to have a positive word to even talk about this group of people.
I love it. And you even say like Keen is highly developed. Like you have this wisdom. So you have a lot of us talk about like I don't feel like I'm an old person. Like inside, I
Mm-mm.
still feel, full of life. Sometimes my body wants to argue argue with me, and we can talk about that in a minute. But I think that I, for me personally, I've been navigating this spot. I'm 62. I'm sorry, I'm 63. I just turned 63. And I had been kind of in this funk, right? And I was trying to figure out what was it that about my life, my work was slowing down. And I still have a lot of things that I love to do, which is, this podcast, and I run a women's nonprofit, and I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to like set myself up. I actually started trying to do that a while ago. I was like, well, as my career is starting to slow down, what am I going to do in retirement? Because I had another friend who she was so excited about retiring. And the first 6 months, they traveled, they did all of these wonderful, you're nodding, you know where this is
I know
going.
where the story is
Yeah.
going.
And she
Yes.
was like, this is so great. And they traveled and they saw their grandkids. And about 6 months into it, she was like, I'm so bored. Is this it? This is it? This is retirement? And I was like, look, girl, you can do anything you want to do. I mean, they aren't rich, but they had set themselves up to where they were comfortable, right? And I said, "What have you wanted to do?" And she said, "Well, I've always wanted to paint." And I said, "Well, then take some painting classes." She said, "Yeah, but I'll never be any good." And I said, "It doesn't matter. It's for the joy of it. It's for the creativity." But I was finding myself like, okay, even though I had planned, even though I had things to do, I was struggling mentally of jumping that gap from being in a season where I was constantly drumming up work. I'm a self-employed musician, so I'm constantly like working on different, how can I get more work and what do I need to do to market myself? And you go through all that for years. And and then especially the music business, it's like you want to stay young, you want to stay youthful.
Hmm.
Um, but then I had the reality of the fact that I'm 63 and it's okay to like let that season go and embrace this new season. That's what I love so much about your book because you really do encourage people to look at this season in a positive way. So
Hmm.
I told my husband, I said, "You know what? I want to go ahead and start taking my Social Security." He goes, "Well, let's do it." And I said, "I think in my brain it will just help turn a switch for me." And I'll go, "Yeah, I have entered a new season and I'm doing it willingly." It's like I'm not doing it like fighting it. And I
Right.
think that's what I see so many people doing it. They're fighting it. So what would your advice be to people that are just really struggling to go over that little hump?
Well, I think part of the reason people do struggle is because we've kind of been sold this story of, retirement is going to be bliss, right? It's your golden years. It's going to be wonderful. You're going to travel. You're going to do all these things that you've always wanted to do. And I think your friend's story is so accurate. I mean, I've seen that play out so many times where people are so happy when they retire for about 6 months, maybe even up to a year. And then they hit that moment of, is it? Um,
Really?
because now if you retire at 62, at 65, you're not just looking at a couple of years of retirement, you're looking at a couple of decades of retirement. And leisure is fun, but it's also kind of boring after a while when you have no like reason to specifically get out of bed and you start to kind of feel like people don't need you, right? Nobody's
Yes.
waiting for you to do anything. Nobody's expecting your phone call, that sort of stuff. And it can start to be a little depressing. And that's that moment where people kind of have to reevaluate, figure out what it is that's going to give them purpose, make them want to get out of bed on a Wednesday morning. And it can be anything, right? You can go back to work. So my mom retired and she was at home for about 6 months before she was like, nope, this is not it. And she went back. Now she went back part time. She didn't go back full time, but she went back part time because she realized how much socialization she got, how much she missed. She was a teacher, how much she missed interacting with the kids and the other teachers. I mean, it wasn't about the money. It was about, I want something to do. I want to feel
Yeah.
like I'm giving back, all those things. But it can be the painting classes. I love that. If that's what you've always wanted to do, then go do it. But we've been sold this story of retirement is supposed to just be all bliss and you go off and you get to do whatever you want whenever you want for forever. And so when people hit the reality of it and the reality doesn't match the myth, the mythical lore that you've been told, it feels unsettling and people have to renegotiate that and figure it out. If they do, if they find new purpose, if they find something that makes them want to get out of bed, then they'll do fine. But
Mhm.
if they don't, there is good evidence that retirement can be the fastest way to head downhill with your health, your emotional well-being, your social well-being, because if you don't figure out that adjustment, and you just become a couch potato and kind of do nothing, that is really bad. Because your
Mm.
brain always wants stimulation. It always wants to be learning something new, it does not want you to just sit in front of a TV. And so we have to keep growing and exploring even during retirement.
Amen.
Yeah. It sounds like we would all benefit from knowing ourselves well before we head into retirement, who we are, what we need, what we're looking forward to, what we're passionate about.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard. I talk in the book, there was an oncologist that had retired that I interviewed, and he was really struggling at that time because he worked, 60, 80-hour weeks as a doctor. And then he retired and he was like, I didn't have time for hobbies, right? My whole life was this job, and now that's not there. So what do I do?
Mm.
And that, it's a huge adjustment for people, especially if they have not had time to develop anything other than this job identity that they had when they were still working.
Right, right. One of the directions you take in the book too that I found really interesting, because my day job is in career transition.
Mm.
And so working with people who are transitioning careers, but also with companies who want to provide training or coaching for their leaders about, the demands of the workforce today and the workplace. So you talk about that and how companies need to be prepared to have older workers and keep them retained and keep them engaged, and to actually put plans in place for that. So what do you think are some starting points that companies can take in that planning?
Well, I think the first thing is acknowledging that this is a shifting demographic in the workforce. I mean, if you just look at demographic trends in the United States and in developing countries around the world, societies are aging. We are living longer than ever before. And again, we're living healthier and more active than ever before, too. So it is this kind of extended middle adulthood. It's not just an extended older adulthood. So these people in their 60s and 70s are wanting to keep working. They're not necessarily thinking, I'm going to retire. And just having businesses look at those demographics and acknowledge them is the first step. I think the fastest growing segment of the workforce right now is people age 65 plus.
Wow.
Because they're continuing to work.
Yeah.
And so that's where your strength is going to be in terms of having people continue to work in your company, whatever your roles are that you have available. So the first thing is acknowledging that. And what that would lead to is re-examining our assumptions about retirement. I think so many businesses, HR people, when somebody gets to 55, let's say, they start to go, oh, well, they've got one foot out the door. They're going to be retiring soon. And maybe that's true. Maybe that is what that individual is thinking about, but maybe it isn't, right? Maybe they want to keep working, because if you like your job, a lot of people don't want to quit. They want to keep working. Now, maybe they want to go part-time, or they want to have flex time. They may want some adjustments as they move, into 60s and early 70s, but they may not want to quit. And so what happens if companies are assuming that people are going to retire, then they start to not engage with them. They don't offer them training. They don't offer them professional development. They start to assume that that person doesn't want that, or that they wouldn't benefit from it, or that it won't be worthwhile because, they'll be gone, in another year or whatever. And we need to be able to have conversations about that, to say, what are you thinking, right? Are you wanting to stay? Does that work for us as a business? Like, what could we do to make this mutually beneficial? And that will help keep your workers happy and in your workforce. I mean, because anybody who owns a business knows that rehiring, like turnover, is very expensive. So if you can keep your workers there, especially if they want to go part-time or flex time, keep that experience, keep that knowledge, keep from having that turnover. At least in my business, I want that at all costs. That whole hiring process and training and all that. It's like, no, please don't leave.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And you're right. That is a bulk of the experience
Mhm.
in the workforce, and being able to retain that knowledge is really crucial.
Mhm.
Yeah, but a friend of mine just went through that. I think she's 62, been at her job in healthcare for a long time. And there was this promotion up, and she realized some people were being considered, and she wasn't even being considered, and she should have been the one. And she finally went to her boss and said, I'm just curious why you're not considering me for this position. He said, well, I just figured you'd be about ready to retire. We need someone that's
Mm.
going to be here for probably another 10 years. You know what? I mean, that's what we would prefer. And she said, I love this job. I don't have any plans on retiring, but it was just what they
Mm.
assumed.
Mhm. Without having a discussion, without just that's the way it is. And I think that's really, really common.
Yeah. And you talk about like ageism in the
Mhm.
book. Um, would you consider that to be ageism right there? Just that thought, that mental thought of, wow, oh, I'm not even going to consider them because,
Yeah. It's implicit ageism. I mean, it's not explicit. He's not explicitly trying to be discriminatory towards her, but he is being discriminatory towards
right.
her because he's assuming based on her age that
Hmm.
she isn't right for a promotion.
Which, by the
Isn't the
way,
right
she
person.
did get that promotion when she
Good for
went in
her.
there and said, I want to be here. He
Yeah.
said, well, then you're the obvious one. And
Yeah.
she got it. I was so proud of her.
Yeah, perfect. But yeah, so ageism is any sort of bias against someone based on their age, and it can affect people at any age. I mean, a lot of times, especially for women, we are never the right age, right?
Never.
We're too young, we're too old, we're just never. But
We're
yeah,
too
so
pregnant.
we're too fertile,
Yeah.
we're not fertile anymore,
Yeah.
just all the things. Um, but any sort of bias like that. And so it's not something, first, actually, let me back up. We are all age biased. We have been raised in this culture in the United States that is very anti-aging. You learn this from childhood, right? Just go look at kids' storybooks and look at how they portray older adults. There is nothing about it that makes you want to grow older or look forward to being an older adult. So we all have this kind of built-in bias. So number one, don't beat yourself up but for having this bias because we've all been trained this way. But the first step to really overcoming it is to recognize it, to go, oh, why do I think that? So, you're getting dressed in the morning and you're thinking, I'm too old to wear this. This doesn't, why? Why is that? Who makes those rules? Who taught you that or said that to you? Or thinking about like what we say to people on their birthdays. So I just turned 50, and it was so interesting to me what people said. I mean, I'm totally cool with it, right? Great. Thrilled to be 50. Um, because I get sort of reverse or ageism in the sense that people go, well, you're too young to care about ageism. You're too
What?
young to be working in anti-ageism stuff. So I got to be older. I got to be 50 to,
Oh
to get
my
there.
goodness.
But the other piece of that, people said such crazy things to me. I got like 3 texts the day before my birthday going, this is your last day in your 40s. This is your last day being 49. I'm like, yeah, yeah, tomorrow's my first day being 50 too. And I had somebody else say to me, oh, you turned 50? Well, you got about 4 good years left.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
Oh
No
my
way.
gosh.
yes. And so we do this to each other.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think part of it is we don't know what else to say. Like culturally, these are the things that we are taught to say. I mean, just go look at the birthday cards. I mean,
Yeah.
we're
Hmm.
supposed to be making these kinds of statements, these kinds of jokes. I'm putting jokes in quotations. But when you are really aware of it, when you're thinking about it, and then you start listening to what people say to you, you go, well, no wonder people don't feel good about aging. Because this is the stuff we're telling each other all the
Exactly.
time.
I
Yeah.
am constantly talking about that with our women in our nonprofit and the girls. I'm like, we have got to stop. We have got to change our language around aging. We've got to change these conversations because, yeah, when I was growing up, I listened to the things that my mom and her
Mhm.
friends were talking about on the phone at night, and it was always about how it sucks to be old. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, oh, it's going to suck to be old.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I'm 63. I can honestly say that my 30s were better than my 20s. My 40s were better than my 30s. I mean, every decade comes with its own challenges, but
Right.
it also comes with its own beauty. And
Right.
that's what I want people, especially women, men too. Men go through this too, but I just want them to like look for the beauty in that age where they are. But
Yeah.
when culture is constantly bombarding us with anti-aging products and anti-aging messaging and anti-aging um you know everything, basically there's no like pro-aging.
Right.
Like how do we age proly? That's not a word. I made up the word proly. but
That's
but
what you can do in retirement. You can
um,
Yeah.
create new words.
Create
I'm
your
going
own
to
word.
create new words.
The I think your point though about there are pros and cons about every age, right? Like I don't want to go back to my 20s without the knowledge that I have now, right? I didn't know that much in my 20s. And there are pros and cons at every single age. I think we just focus so much on the potential health changes or it's that again a stereotype that people as they get older they sit around and all they talk about is their aches and pains and their doctor's visits and that sort of thing. And those we do have physical changes, right? But
A hundred percent. Yeah.
you can have health challenges in your 20s. I mean, it is not limited to older people. Maybe we do have a few more typically, but the thing that I find so interesting and working with this population so much, I've got people I've got a client right now who's in her 90s and has had very few health problems. And she is funny and spry and kind of causing trouble all the time in her retirement community, which I love. But she had a stroke not that long ago. And this was the first major health issue she's had in her 90s, right? I was with her at the hospital a lot of the day and she got better, got regained some of her abilities as the day went on and never a complaint, funny, joking with the nursing staff at the hospital, just, and I look at her and I think that's exactly who I want to be, right? She doesn't let anything get her down. And so you do have a choice. You can be the older adult who talks about all their doctor's appointments and talks about all their aches and pains, or you can be the older adult who's really fun to be around and enjoyable. And I have other clients who do have significant health problems and they're still really positive, always making a joke. And then I have other clients who are really not fun to be around because all they do is fuss about everything. And so your ability to shape how your aging process goes starts with what's going on in your own head about how the process is going to go. And then your attitude as you go through it. You get to choose who you're going to be. And I talk about in the book that there's a lot of research now about how your outlook on aging, whether or not you have a positive outlook or a negative outlook, really does impact how it goes. Like people with a positive outlook have less risk of dementia. They walk faster. They have less cardiovascular disease. They live on average 7.5 years longer than people with a negative outlook.
Wow.
So you get to choose that. It's about 30% genetics and about 70% lifestyle choices. And you get to choose which one you want to be.
Yeah, I saw that on your Instagram. That's one of the posts that I noticed. You have a great Instagram account. We'll link that for our
Thank
listeners
you.
too.
I do it under duress. It's one of those things that you feel like you need to do to be a public figure to promote the book and to do different things. But every time I have to do it, I have a guy who helps me, and I just look at him. I'm like, I hate you. I don't want to do this.
You and I are a lot alike.
But
Yeah.
we do it and we get through it, and he makes me look great. So shout out to him.
Well, in this world of aging and in your teenager world, what is your favorite topic or the one that you kind of gravitate most to?
Oh, definitely think it's the ageism piece. I mean, I think the thing I'm most passionate about is getting people to understand how much of their aging journey is in their own control, because we've been sold, again, this story that it's all downhill, that it's inevitable, that it's going to suck, right?
Mhm.
And that just isn't true. Your aging experience today is not what your grandparents experienced. We live longer, we have lived healthier, and how you approach it is really up to you. So you've got tremendous power in helping to determine how this goes. And if people knew that, I think if you're looking forward to these years, then you show up for them.
Hmm.
You show up and are ready to go. And if you're thinking that your best years are already behind you, then you don't show up. You don't take care of yourself. You don't do the things you need to do to have a good aging experience as you grow older.
Yeah. And I'm interested in how that translates to the chapter and the work you do within the medical system. And there was a statement about how it's not really a system, it's silos. There's silos of care and not a lot of overlap. So if you're going to be proactive about aging and really care for yourself well, how does that translate into medical care?
So I think the biggest thing is understanding that because things are so siloed, you have to advocate, or you have to have an advocate with you for you in these things. A lot of my older adult clients grew up in a time where you went to the doctor and you listened to what the doctor said, and you didn't argue with them, and you didn't ask questions, right? You it was sort of the doctor tells you what to do and you do it. And that is really not the system we're operating in anymore. You really have to be willing to advocate for yourself, to say, well, this other doctor told me this, or I've got this other thing going on, and try to get what you need from the system. The system is not necessarily guaranteed to give you what you need because they're not talking to each other. Your cardiologist is not talking to your urologist, and they're not talking to your rheumatologist. And having an advocate, having some sort of care coordinator, if that service is available where you are, super helpful, because then you can get someone with some expertise to kind of look at all the different programs and medications that you're on and everything to kind of figure out, okay, what's the big picture. The other thing I really recommend, but is hard to find, is to find a geriatrician. A geriatrician is a doctor who specializes in working with older adults because they take a holistic approach. They understand that as we age, our bodies change. And so prescribing medication to a 75-year-old the same way you would prescribe it to a 50-year-old is not appropriate. But that's what a lot of doctors do because they've never really had any training in geriatrics. Almost every doctor has to do a pediatric rotation in medical school, but only about a third of medical schools require a geriatric rotation,
Mm.
even though the vast majority of doctors are going to work with older adults at some point, because we tend to need more healthcare as we get older. So finding a geriatrician is super helpful because they take that kind of holistic approach as well.
That's awesome. I've never heard of a geriatrician, and
Mm-hmm.
and they probably are hard to find. Several years ago, I moved my elderly parents up to Nashville from Arkansas, where I grew up, and they moved into a retirement home, and I was able to care for them. I was in full caregive mode for about 10 years for both of them until they both passed away. But I did notice because I was taking them to all their doctor's appointments. There were a few doctors that I felt like my mom had a lot of health issues, and I would be like, well, can we try this or try this? And I felt this little resistance, like, well, she's 85. What do you want me to do?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of a thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And uh or I took my dad, to an exam, and they were like, "Yeah, we don't need to do this anymore." And I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "Well, he's he's 86." And they were like, "Something else will get him before this does." And I'm like, "So you're just going to stop treating him?" I mean, and I'm like, "Okay, we are not going back to these doctors if they
Mm-hmm.
just don't have any desire to even try
Mm-hmm.
because of strictly because of their age. So their life is not as valuable because
Right.
of their age."
Right.
I mean,
I mean, that is the messaging. Yes. The
it's awful.
it's really it's so hard because there is some sort of, I'll say, perception that when you get to a certain age, whatever that age is, but when you get to a certain age, somehow you lose the right to healthcare, you lose the right to preventative measures, you lose the right to treatment. And I'm saying it that way because if you think about healthcare or as a human right, right? That as a 50-year-old, I have a right to go get healthcare and to be treated and to have whatever issue I'm coming in for addressed and addressed fully.
Hmm.
And yet somehow at 86, your dad doesn't have the right anymore to have his issues addressed fully. And I think that's really a very slippery slope because what age did that happen, right? What age do we want to say that you don't have the right to have your healthcare issues addressed anymore? It's just not worth it.
Right.
Worth it to who? And
Right.
Right.
and I know that I'm going to want my health issues addressed at 86. So I want the 86-year-olds now to have their
Yeah.
healthcare issues addressed as well. But you're right. I mean, I see that all the time. And there certainly can be like a cost benefit analysis. Like if we've got someone who's, 86 and we're talking about doing a major surgery that's going to have months and months of recovery, well, then we have to weigh those options. We have to say, is that something we really want to do? But that should be the person's choice, right? Do I want to put myself through that? Not just the healthcare system going, well, that's just not worth it, right?
It's
Because
not going to see.
how do we decide?
Right. And they don't, and they never suggest holistic stuff like you were just saying
Right.
with the Jerry. I mean, it's like, okay, maybe we don't want to go this route, but let's look at some other options.
Hmm.
They just say, well, it's their age.
Right.
They just
Right.
shrug their shoulders.
Yeah. I can definitely tell you a story about my mom who went to the doctor and, was having some pain. And they basically just said that it's your age, didn't really offer much of anything. And boy, did I get a phone call after that about, this is what do you, well, yeah, I mean, but had aches and pains at other points in my life and we could investigate those, but now we just don't investigate anymore. We don't even try.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, Corinne, what have we not asked you today or brought up that you were really hoping we would have?
Oh, I don't know. I think we've covered a lot this time. You guys came with good questions. I love it.
Well, it's, like I said, for me, I'm a little older than Stacy, but after caregiving for two parents until they passed away, and then going through it, kind of entering into it myself and all of the mental gymnastics that I've been doing, trying to figure out how do I want to make these next few years? You talk about that too a little bit, about how, you know, we just, there's an age place like 65 or whatever. It's like there's all of this language for different stages of life. And then all of a sudden, from like 65 to death, it's just one. We're just
Yeah.
like,
You're just an older adult.
you're just old, you
There's
know?
no There's no difference between a 65-year-old and a
Yeah,
95-year-old, right? That makes
right.
total sense. We don't have any language to distinguish you.
Well, I remember I said something recently to my son, and I don't know. I was complaining about getting out too late or something. I was in not feeling good, and I was like, Derek, I'm 60 something years old. And he was like, yeah, but you're not 80. He was like, come on, what you're acting like it's like it's over. And I was like,
Mhm.
and I've had to really sort of
It,
fight that.
what are you saying to yourself in your own head? Yeah. Yeah.
It is like we say it to ourselves, but then a lot of it is conditioning. Like you said, it's from what I've listened to older women before me say about it. Like,
Hmm.
well, yes, society doesn't think we're valuable anymore, so I guess I'm not valuable. It's like you believe all these lies sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as you pay more attention, you will really start to catch yourself saying those things, or that stuff that comes out of your mouth and you're like, what did I just do? I was with my husband in New York, and I had my AirPods and they wouldn't connect to my phone. I was getting really cranky. And he was like, what is wrong? And I said, oh, these are my old AirPods. They won't connect. They're just old and cranky. And my husband just looked at me. He's like, you know that's ageist, right? Oh man. It's like what words are coming out of my mouth? But it's like it's
Hmm.
already trained in there and I
Yeah.
can't get away from it. All I can do is try to pay attention and try not to say it anymore.
So, what's the biggest one step you could take if you want to encourage somebody out there like today that's struggling with it? Like, is it medical? Is it mental? Is it physical? What would be the first step you would say to like stop believing all of this
It's
ageism
mental.
nonsense?
Oh yeah,
Mental.
it's mental. It's you have got to take the red pill or whatever to really open your own eyes to go, let me just listen. Take a week and just listen for ageist comments, right? Ageist jokes about somebody's birthday, ageist comments about people on TV or politicians. I mean, just listen to the TV, listen to your friends. And if you just pay attention and instead of just accepting, oh yeah, haha, whatever, you stop and go, why are people saying that? Why would you say that about that person, or whatever it is? Where did that come from? You will be shocked at how much you hear. And I think, again, that awareness is the first step. The second step is then starting to try to change the language or call people out. I mean, it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable, but when people, say, oh, you look great for your age, go, really? How old am I? Right? Or even just, why can't I just look great? Why
Right.
does it have to have anything to do with my age? And people will kind of be like, well, I I was just trying to be nice. I was like, I know. And that's so kind of you. But why does it have to have anything to do with age? But again, people are just programmed. It's the
Yeah.
programming. And so trying to just interject it, right? Like, why are we saying that? Why do we phrase it that way? And could we do something different?
Yeah, reframe it all. Let's
Yep.
just reframe aging. And I think
Yep.
that's what your book does so well.
Thank you.
So, Stacy, do you have some Enneagram prompts for us today?
Oh, goodness. I do have Enneagram prompts
We
today.
always end with some little Enneagram prompts. So
Okay.
Yes.
bear with us for just a second here.
Do I have to know my number or do I have
Do you know your number?
I do.
What are
I'm
you?
a one.
A
I'm a
You're
one.
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 My
I,
husband's a one. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm an eight. Marsha's a
I'm a
nine.
nine.
Mm.
Yep.
All right.
So what's
Well,
your
the
prompts?
Enneagram. Oh, sorry, Marsha. What were you
No,
saying?
I was going to say, so what are your prompts?
Okay. Today we're talking about healthy aging and creating new stories for ourselves. So the thinking prompt for intellectual exploration is, what belief or stereotype about aging have you accepted without question? And how might learning more about true aging expand your perspective? From a feeling prompt, emotional connection, when you imagine yourself or a loved one growing older, what emotions come up? And how can you foster a sense of curiosity and possibility around that? And doing so, action and application, what's one lifestyle choice or daily practice you can start today to support healthy aging for yourself or someone you care about, and seek out a resource like a conversation with a professional or a book or an activity that reframes aging in a positive light.
Those are great prompts. And I think that last thing, the last one doing, seek out a book. We have it right
We
here.
have it.
Corinne's book, Keenagers, Telling a New Story About Aging. Thank you so much for being with us today. This was a really delightful and lovely interview, and I think the work you're doing is super important. So we are cheering you on.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right, have a good day.
You too.
Oh, by the way, we'll link up where you can buy Corinne's book. We're gonna link up where you can find her on social media and everything. So if you whether you're aging or whether you're dealing with aging parents or something, y'all need to check this out.
We're all aging.
We're all
We're all aging. Everybody. We're older at the end of this podcast than we were at the beginning. It's always happening. Not just something older people do.
I'm not aging. I'm not aging anymore. I've decided to quit. All right, everybody. Everyone have a great week. Thanks, Corinne. Talk to you soon, Stacy. Bye-bye.